And now, the moment you all have been waiting for. It's time for the Rad N Bad podcast by Hickory Learning Group. Here are your hosts, Mike Carrero and Sean Yocum.
All right. Well, what is up, everyone? Welcome back to Rad N Bad. I am Sean Yocum, BCBA, LBA, and we are back for another episode of basically just pulling back the whole curtain on this whole ABA industry. That just seems to be a theme that myself and Mike are doing. We're just going to cut through all the crap and get back to what actually matters. I don't know. The stuff I was brought up on, Mike, good clinical quality, ethical radical behaviorism, and actually caring about the families you're working with and empowering them, right? But as always, enough of my spiel. I'm not riding solo. Sitting across from me through a screen, I guess I don't know. I guess it's kind of across from me because I'm looking through a screen and you're there. It's my partner in clinical crime, the man who keeps the gears turning and the data clean, co-host Mike Carrero. Mike, what is happening, my brother?
Building stress, getting ready for some army stuff, but ready more than ever.
That's right. It's that time of the year. You go away for like a mini boot camp.
Yep.
You were just away. How was that?
The orders I was just on?
Yeah.
It was fun. We were at the range, so really long days. They set the field on fire.
Wait, they just like lit it on fire?
No, the rounds that hit off the grass. It
clueless.
Set the ground on fire.
This is how clueless I am. I'm sitting here thinking like the army is just torching with like flamethrowers.
No, they do controlled burns. They'll do those to prevent like forest fires. I'm going to throw out the name of it, but it's okay if you don't know it. It's an M249, otherwise known as a saw gunner, or like a machine gun for those like in that, right? But it's a fully automatic 5.56 chambered like machine gun. And it's just pumping rounds down range, at targets, of course. And because it's very, very dry and we're in the middle of a drought, they set not one, not two, not three, but 7 fires.
Wow. So
they almost shut down the range. They had to bring out range control and the fire department on Benning to make sure that they could put it out and actually not close the range down.
Who would have thunk it? Here we are on an ABA podcast and we're just talking about control burns on like an army base. But I digress. We're dropping a brand new episode today. Who the hell is this episode? I'm so pumped, Mike. You have no idea. Because we're going to dive deep into, I think, an intersection of technology and actual boots on the ground clinical quality. I think if you've been anywhere near the ABA space lately, you've heard about Hi-Rasmus. I mean, not because we're ambassadors, but honestly, they're building some of the most innovative behavior analyst centric clinical tools, I think, on the market right now. And I met this lovely woman in person. She's also a North Carolina resident, which is pretty cool. Met her in person at Cal ABA. And she's, I think, one of the main people that's actually driving that clinical vision from the inside. So enter Dr. Moran. She didn't just graduate and jump into the tech startup. She's actually lived a literal clinical odyssey. I'll let her kind of explain this whole journey that she went on across the globe from Thailand and South Korea and Kazakhstan. I mean, she's been in more countries than you, Mike, I think. Honestly.
We'll go number for number.
I mean, we'll say. And then she went to London to get her PhD, and then
yours are probably cooler than mine.
I mean, I had to get the passport expanded at one point in time.
Erin's here. But yeah, the black sheep BCBA actively battling negative stigmas of ABA and proving that, there's value on the global stage. And she's back in the States and working with major providers and was beta testing stuff for HiRasmus. And here we are today. I don't know the title. Is it product development and strategy? Is it career? What's the new title, Erin?
Director of clinical innovation.
Okay. Director of clinical innovation.
I do a lot of different things, so it's hard to kind of consolidate it down into a specific title.
You're doing everything at HiRasmus.
Doing big things.
You're a Swiss Army knife at HiRasmus, and I'm just happy to have you. So Dr. Erin Moran, welcome to Rad N Bad.
Yeah, thank you for having me. Very excited, although you forgot to mention that I did come visit you guys in person.
I was going to. I didn't get to go to Cal ABA. I was on Army stuff. That's where I got to meet you and got just a small little glimpse into your brain of how great HiRasmus can be. And that was one of the most intuitive conversations that we could have in, I don't know, an hour of how to get this platform to do all of the things that we want. And I mean, we shared many a different conversation about how we get to do the great things that we do with a tool that actually works.
Yeah. And it's like so wild to meet people in real life who are using HiRasmus like out in the wild, and to like really see it come to life. That's like the best part for me. I love getting to connect with users and see the creative ways that they're using HiRasmus. I think that's like the best part is when someone uses something that we created for a totally different purpose. And you're like, wow, like that's great that this tool is so flexible that it can meet so many of these different needs, even ones that we didn't even intend for it to meet.
Yeah. A live example of that one was we're doing research with it. And it's been wonderful.
Yeah, absolutely.
Nice. Mike, you want to get this party started? You want
I
to?
absolutely
You want the
can.
first question, or am I getting the first question?
No, I'll take it. I got it.
We usually
So,
we decide, but you
Sean
go first.
kind of hinted at you have, and you said it too, a literal passport full of travel, right? So one of those things mentioned was Thailand, correct? Okay.
Yep.
So if you go back to that time where you were in Thailand teaching English and seeing individuals with autism struggle with almost no support, what was the kind of exact moment or realization that you said, okay, I'm going to make this pivot to behavior analysis?
Yeah, so I studied in my undergraduate degree, double majored in psychology and international studies. So I love psychology. I really loved kids and I love to travel and learn about the world. So, after graduation, I decided, why not go move to Thailand, go to a tropical paradise, and go teach English for some time. Turns out my tropical paradise was maybe more of like an industrial port city. But it was still a great kind of chapter of my life. And I got thrown into a classroom of 38 6-year-olds who didn't speak any English and I didn't speak any Thai. And I would have maybe expected a co-teacher who perhaps could bridge the language barrier. I did not have one. And my first day of class, I literally had the kids. It was like the windows were open. They're like dangling each other out of the windows. It was wild. So if only I knew what I know now about behavior management, that would have saved quite a bit of stress trying to wrangle that class. But so it was a challenge to say the least, but I did really grow a really strong connection with the students in the class. But one particular student did really stick out to me. He had autism, but autism at, in Thailand, this was quite a while ago. It wasn't super well recognized. They didn't have the resources. No one really had the knowledge of how to, support this learner. And, at that time, in that location, like corporal punishment was still very common in schools. And, this student didn't have the supports he needed to succeed. So unfortunately, he was subjected to some pretty harsh discipline that just really broke my heart. And I felt like I didn't have anything that I could do to help him. Like I tried everything that I could. And that's what really kind of opened my eyes, to the fact that, and it seems silly to say now, but, to experience for the first time, like these are the disadvantages that so many people have around the world with disabilities. And and that's what made me want to, maybe this is a path for me. Maybe there's something that I could do. I come from a privileged position where I can access education, I can access training, I have some agency to pursue advanced degrees and be someone that could be a voice for, these individuals and to really help build communities, build resources so that, they didn't have to suffer quite so much. So that's kind of what triggered me into moving down this industry, this route that eventually led me to behavior analysis.
So what kind of support, even though it was seemingly none, did you have? And how did you kind of navigate you're referencing two different things, right? The first one that comes to mind is like cultural competency, right? Like you were quite literally thrown to the wolves and like figure it out. And I feel like a lot of, kind of up and coming providers, that's been a lot of their experience where it's just, here you go. You have a degree, go do things and stuff. You lived that like to the millionth degree, right? So what'd you do and how'd you overcome that?
You just keep showing up and you just keep trying, and I think that when it comes to like foreign English teachers, in a lot of different countries, there's this, it's like a revolving door of those teachers, and the schools there see teachers coming in who just want to have this like wild international experience, and teaching is just like a way to make that happen. So they're maybe not so dedicated. So by just me showing up, I think, and like showing my the compassion that I had for the kids and trying to work it out, I think that that's what helped me build a bridge with the teachers who were there, and that they could see that I really cared. And so then when the moment I knew I made it in with the teachers is when they started involving me during morning assembly with the gossip. I was like, ooh, I'm in the gossip chat now. Like I made it in. And then it was, I had a lot more support with the co-teachers, and was able to kind of lean on them. There's a lot of English teachers from the Philippines who are really experienced teachers. And so, when I was able to build those bridges with them, those connections, they were my saving grace, truly. The more experienced teachers.
Yeah. I was going to say, Erin, it sounds like when you were there, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, it's almost like not the same level of resources. You're there with, were you there with like a support system, or was it like you were just there and you had to kind of like find people to support on?
So there's, in most countries, they'll have these government run programs. So the government sponsors foreign English teachers to come and have a specific visa to come and teach at these schools. So it is a structured program that I was involved in there, and also in Korea when I taught English there as well.
Nice.
So there is like a structure, and I did have like a site coordinator. We had like a 1 week training when we got on the ground in Thailand, but
I mean, you totally. I mean, that was the moment where you like decided to like totally upend your career, and you're like, I'm switching to like, I'm going behavior analysis.
Mm-hmm.
And then
well, I didn't know I was going behavior analysis. I didn't know what a behavior analysis was, but I knew I was going towards autism.
You were going towards something within the autism care.
Yeah.
Industry, something wrong with that. And then you basically pack your bags and like you head to Kazakhstan. So now, okay, we're in Thailand. Was it Kazakhstan next, or what was after that?
You skipped a couple countries.
All right. Well, what did I skip? What country did I skip?
So first I moved back to America, and I taught as a paraprofessional. Yeah, a lot of back and forth here. So I taught as a paraprofessional in a high school self-contained special education classroom. And so that was my first kind of exposure to behavior analysis, maybe a bit more BMOD, to be honest. But that was when I first experienced like severe behaviors and all this stuff, and got my first kind of exposure to some elements of behavior analysis. But I felt like in that situation, we still weren't able to like really meet their needs. And that's when I like knew that maybe working as a school teacher wasn't going to be my calling, but the behavioral consultant that would come in, that's where I started to gravitate towards, and thought, maybe that's going to be the route for me. So that's when I decided to to complete a master's degree in ABA from the University of Cincinnati. I did that while teaching English in South Korea.
That's right. I was going to say.
I had the itch to go back. So
I was going to say,
back in Asia for a year, teaching in South Korea while completing the master's degree. Wrapped up my contract in Korea and wasn't quite ready to come back to the States yet. So that's when I got online. I found this website called idealist.org. I don't even know if it still exists at this point in time, but I just typed in Autism Asia just to see what was out there. And the listing popped up for a group of moms of children with autism in Kazakhstan. And I had never thought about Kazakhstan before. So I was like, well, what's going on in Kazakhstan? Sounds like a good time to me, So I reach out and I was like, what are you guys looking for? And it was a psychologist actually who posted it, not one of the moms. And she said that there's a group of moms here. They formed a small center. They want someone to come and provide ABA therapy to their kids. And I said, well, if I come out and help the kids, like, that's nice and all, but then as soon as I leave, what good is that? I'm like, I'd rather come out and like empower the parents and really give some skills to the parents so that they can, have a lasting impact after I leave. And so I was like, I think that like 4 weeks would probably be the minimum that we would need to actually, make a difference. And so they said, come, they arranged this date, arranged this flight. I left Korea, traveled around a little bit, and wound up in Bangkok. I went back to visit my students.
Back to Thailand.
Back to Thailand. And then I was actually my flight got canceled. And then I didn't know if I was still going to be able to make it or not. And it was like The Hangover, like Bangkok has her now. And I was just kind of stranded for a little while until they found a donor who purchased another flight for me to come, which was
Wow.
really nice. So they picked me up. This was in October. October in Thailand is very warm. October in Kazakhstan is freezing, which I was not prepared for. And I only had a backpack because I was backpacking through Southeast Asia. So I'm like in tank top and shorts in this backpack. They picked me up in the middle of the night, took me to a back alley to get my passport stamped.
Man.
And I was like, this is probably legitimate. And then took me to one of the family's homes. I'm you can't tell because you can only see my face, but I'm pretty small. I'm pretty petite. They gave me their children's clothes to wear so I could have warm clothes because I was ill prepared to be in what is essentially almost Siberia. If you could think of the weather, I was obviously not thinking of the weather when I set off on this. So then
Wow.
I woke up the next morning. They brought me to the clinic. They flew me there. They got me there. I was thinking like, yes, they are really excited to have me here. And as it turns out, many of the moms were not super excited to have me there. They were quite skeptical, actually, that behavior analysis was going to help them, that it was appropriate for their country, that it's just this American thing, that it's dog training, and rightfully so. I mean, you don't know what you don't know. And they maybe have only had poor experiences with someone doing ABA that wasn't. So honestly, more power to them for being very skeptical. But it was definitely a tough situation to be in, when you think that you're kind of coming into something else and then you realize this is not the situation that I thought I was going to find myself in. So uh, it was tricky to where do you get started?
I
Where do you go with that? So there was one mom, and she was very excited to have me. She was also very loud and outgoing, and her daughter could only say a few words, but they were rather unintelligible. And I decided, like, let's do PECs. So we started running through the phases of PECs, and I later became a PECs consultant, right? So I've done a lot of PECs in my day. Still to this day, she was had one of the most immediate and like rapid skill development with PECs. So she was very quickly saying, "Ya hachu chocolat," and starting to say like 4-word, "I want chocolate, I want milk and sausage," like right away, extremely clearly. And so this mom became like my champion, and then she started telling everyone in Kazakhstan that like maybe we should give this a try. And so then we had like a series of workshops that were hosted at their clinic, at their center. We had the projector, and I had my, like, I don't even know what it was, maybe like verbal behavior or something, not appropriate at all in hindsight. But I was like, oh, I'm going to teach them about behavior analysis. And I'm rambling on about something. And one of the moms, raised their hand and said, is it my fault that my kid has autism?
Mm,
And I
man.
said, no. And she said, my doctor said, because I was depressed, that's why my kid has autism.
Oh,
I've
And
never
I
heard
looked
that one.
around and like, do you guys all also think that? And they're like, yes, that's what we've been told. So at that point,
wow.
I turned off that presentation and we went a totally different route with that. Um, the
Man.
focus of what we were doing. And it was a lot of, um, sharing new updated knowledge, trying to build their confidence and their support, letting them know it's not their fault. There's also as there are in any country, there's all these pseudosciences around. So help them to identify what's a pseudoscience, what is not. How can you not get sucked into something that's going to take all of your money, that's not going to help you? Because that was a big issue that they were facing as well. So it really kind of went a totally different direction than what I had anticipated. But we ended up building some great relationships with them, with some of the local universities. The head of the Department of Translation Studies, her daughter has autism. So she gave me a bunch of final year translation studies students to be my translators because I don't
Wow.
speak Kazakh or Russian. So, we built a nice community while I was there. And that's what prompted me to develop my like research proposal for my doctoral work.
That's what a story, because like you basically just like packed your bags and like you just headed to Kazakhstan. You were there for like what, like 4 months to volunteer?
That was 4 weeks at that time.
4 weeks. Okay.
Yeah.
So you're there for 4 weeks and you're basically doing like deep parent training with these moms and like laying, like you said, laying down the bricks for like your PhD. So I have to ask this question because like this is right up my alley, Mike's alley with parent mediated and working with families.
Mhm.
And I think whether you're in North Carolina or Asia, right? Moms are going to be moms. Moms are moms, right? So like, what did that experience teach you just about just universal struggles of parents? And, you know, with being a mom yourself, being a father, like we struggle as parents, right? And how much of that absolute just like raw reality of like being in a different culture as well, kind of like just drive you to kind of like what you're building right now? Because the reason we signed on for Hi-Rasmus was like the caregiver support aspect of it. So like, how did that experience kind of drive you into building the caregiver support that's going into that platform today and what with everything you're doing?
Yeah, I mean, the moms, they were incredible. You know, their kids, you know, their society at the time looked at their children as something that should be separated, hidden away, closed off, not something that the world should see. And they're saying no. My kids have value. My kids deserve to learn. They deserve to build their skills. They deserve access to therapists and to therapies that will help them. And they were making it happen. They were the ones pounding down doors of policymakers, fundraising, building their centers. I mean, I was just in awe of them, you know, not taking no for an answer. And so I was like, this is who I want to be behind. This is who I'm going to support. But also made me realize that parents, you know, they're the ones that are the vehicle of change. And I think you see that in a lot of countries. If you look at how ABA and has or different services have developed and how funding has been secured, these are parent driven initiatives. And so I was really on kind of felt like, you know, the ground floor of this in Kazakhstan, of these parents coming together, demanding these, you know, services or payment for them. But you know, they have tremendous barriers to accessing those. Would probably be a whole other podcast about what it's like of how difficult it is for them to even obtain a diagnosis. Their kids have to go away for a month.
Wow.
That's crazy.
Yes. So the challenges are really real. And when I was there, I tried to go to some of the schools that would accept special needs students, but they wouldn't let me in. They didn't. They kind of locked me out a bit. But what I did find was that the translators, the undergrad students, when I first started, they were kind of like, why are you here? Like, why are you working with the kids? They didn't know anyone they didn't see the value in it because they weren't exposed to disability really. And about halfway through, when they started seeing the real impacts and saw the kids starting to improve, they started reading Skinner. And they got really into it. So that's what made me think about, for my doctoral work, or how would we make an impact in a place like, you know, I'm in Eastern Kazakhstan. I'm not even in the capital city, right? Like I'm in Ust-Kamenogorsk. Like we're out there. Like what could we do? And so it's like we have to lean in on the parents, you know, because they're the ones that are out there doing the work. But I got this glimpse into these university students of being open to change. And so that's when I thought, if we can get some practical strategies, practical skills to these students that they could use with, you know, learners and see some immediate impacts, maybe that would inspire them to learn more, pursue a career, pursue more additional training. So my doctoral research was, have I told you about it before?
Not when I
No.
met you.
So it was like a train the trainer, training the trainer kind of model. So I essentially made a scripted training program that focused in on, I don't know, around 10, you know, discrete trial, token economy, prompt fading, you know, that kind of stuff. And I had a student manual and a teacher manual. And so the teacher manual was fully scripted, and it walks through teaching these evidence-based practices fully around BST. So there is an instruction. we created video models when I went there so that the video models would be in their language and their context with the materials that they would normally see in day-to-day life. So they would do a video model, a live model, and then the students would practice. And the instructor would go around giving that feedback. And then I had scripted group feedback to provide afterwards, just for tips, things you would expect to provide. And so it's a full BST based training package that I used BST to train the mothers to deliver. So the moms were actually the one using the instructor manuals at the university for undergraduate and graduate students training them. So I can't even remember how long it was, maybe a couple weeks, where I used BST to train the moms. So first I put the moms through the whole training. And then I had the moms practice delivering the training, and we'd give them feedback until they met fluency delivering the training. So we also had to give them some public speaking training too, to build their confidence. And so we went to the university. We had role play scenarios of all the skills that we were teaching. We assessed the delivery of those skills in a role play scenario with the students. Of course, they scored low. They'd never had heard of any of them before. And then by the end, we tested their skills again in a role play scenario with the vignettes that we gave them, and they performed fantastic. Like, they did such a great job implementing them. We did a follow-up study back at the center that the moms had established, delivered the training to like the teachers, the therapists at the clinic, and then actually tested their skills with real students afterwards. And again, they did a great job applying those skills. And so I was very excited about, the results. But I think the part that kind of dampened the excitement a little bit was like, okay, well, we can teach these skills, but we all know that that's just the start. And so without the ongoing support, future work and more down the road.
I mean, I'm speechless right now, but like it just proves a point that when you have to become resourceful and you have to like work with what you're given, the power to those moms to go through that training, it just proves to you that like you can train or teach anybody about behavior analysis, and you don't necessarily have to go through like, a 40-hour training as an RBT. Yeah. You basically, could train somebody on how to do it with the science of behavior analysis and behavior skills training. I mean, Mike, I'm sure you have so much to say about this, because I saw you smiling when she was like, I built a BST model where we trained the trainer who trained the trainer who then trained the trainer who then trained the trainer.
Really, really convoluted method section to write.
You said so many amazing things that we don't typically hear a lot of in the space now, right? So circling back to kind of the beginning of it, you started with, you had barriers and you didn't give up, right? You went, that's an opportunity. I have to identify solutions and we are going to push past this. Then you had healthy skepticism, rightfully so, because if you Google ABA, you're going to hear dog training, compliance training, all of the bad things, which if you've met Sean and I, right, we just look at you and go, that's true. And we go, I hear you. That is a part of it, but that's a misunderstanding and misalignment and misrepresentation of what it should be, right? So you looked at those parents and went, I get that. And you did the number one thing that we preach to everybody. You got to get buy-in, which means you have to know that you can trust me, because they've probably been burned before by that, snake oil salesman and that person that sold their hopes and dreams and said, I can fix everything, or the person that blamed them for that very specific thing. And you took that and said, that's really hard. I'm going to work with that. Okay. And then what'd you do? You started to prove it. And most importantly, you didn't see just the individual, you saw the entity, right? You saw the entirety of that family and that long-term vision. And that's exactly what we do now. And we use Hi-Rasmus to do that, because we do BST with our families. Because I'll walk into any family's house and I'll go, this is great if I can do it. But if they can't do it for you, it's just a circus trick, right? And they go, what do you mean? But if they can do it for you, they have to be able to do it for me. And I go, that's not how this works, right? And we start off very similarly to how you did with, all right, cool. Watch me do this. And we are going to go through some blocks of instruction and then some role plays and then hands-on until you understand what to do. Now, I think we do it in a slightly different way, because you were teaching specific skills, correct?
Yes. Yeah.
Right? So we took that and now we've adapted it to we teach concepts, right? So we teach the understanding of these are certain principles of reinforcement. These are principles of punishment. These are how you actually understand the science to teach multiple skills, because you address the biggest issue that clinics, schools, anyone in the environment faces is generalization and expansion of knowledge. That skill unfortunately dies when no one is there to maintain it. Right? Or there's no pivot and the skill can't expand because we don't know how to expand that skill, which means we have to support that. And I think that's something that is missing in the field. And I'm so glad to see that, like, not to sound old, right? Going back to like the old ways of things where we started and doing ABA the right way. It's just so refreshing to see that that's been happening through a significant period of time across cultures, that for those of you listening, there's no excuse to not do it this way.
I was just about, Mike, you took the words out of my mouth. Like, Erin just basically explained, like, I went to Kazakhstan and these moms needed help because they probably didn't have childcare, right? They were the only ones providing any kind of respite care for their sons and daughters, right? Lack of resources. And then here we are, living in America where we have all these resources, and it's this very like culture of dependency, like that's been developed, like we're going to fix your problems. But then you basically, like Mike said, you had all these barriers and you proved that like the science can work if you have buy-in and if you have true motivation to learn.
Yeah.
So there's no excuse, in my opinion. There's no excuse, Erin.
No, well, it's certainly, I appreciate all the kind words, but it's the moms. Do you know what I mean? Like, I
Yeah.
had moms who were in it, and now I was not at the time a parent. Now I am a parent. I'm even more in awe of them. The time commitment that they put in to be able to do this, and how they arrange childcare to do that. Wow, I think maybe if I went back in time, should I have asked so much? I don't, but can't change anything about that now. But it was really them. They put in the work and they were receptive. But I think when you have a good system that allows people to succeed, to contact reinforcement, like, I think that they genuinely enjoyed gaining these skills and gaining the confidence. So if you can set up your parent training in a way that is empowering, I think that goes a really long way. And then, they'll want more.
Yeah,
You
we talk
built
about that
an
all the time.
environment to evoke a behavior. That's basically what you did.
And it goes into, like, you reference principles of reinforcement, but we also have to show, like, we're humans, we're going to make mistakes, right? We look at this and, like, people throw things at families and they're like, you need to do it this way. And that's not realistic. That's not seeing the family for who they are and the needs. That's not, you went to work, I went to work, we're both exhausted, there's not dinner, we haven't done any of the things that we need to do. Oh, and now I have to run this program, right? That's not real.
No.
And like, you give so much credit to the families, as do we, because it's not about what I do. I'm just a buffer. I'm just the hub of information that's giving you skills and assets to do the things that you're already doing. And this kind of leads into that next question, because you got a lot of pushback from families, right? Healthy skepticism is a wonderful thing. And so you've described yourself as a little bit of a black sheep during your PhD program, right? Being the only one to, have a BCBA and actively battling, the negative stigma associated with ABA. How'd you go about defending the science in an environment like that and understanding what good ethical ABA should look like?
Yeah. So my doctoral program, I was at UCL's Institute of Education, which is a highly ranked university for educational research. And so I was really drawn to it for its, research, like the rigor, the different specialties that would be available, and on all the on-campus activities and exposure to these different fields. And also living in London, what's not to love about that? But I didn't quite know going into it that there was in the UK such like a stigma towards ABA, and within my university even as well. I was only BCBA there, and I was not prepared for some of the backlash and to come in and to really have to defend the science, defend the industry. But I think actually, I went there partially to be exposed to other viewpoints. So, I put myself in that position. So I had, only myself to blame for that. But in the end, I think that, you know, there is so much good in our field and there's so much good in our science, but science is something that's ever evolving. And there's a lot of things in our day-to-day practice that are just because that's how we do them, and that's just how we do it. We can pat ourselves on our backs as much as we want for being an evidence-based practice, being research being the gold standard for autism treatment, but we do have a lot of research behind some things, but not a lot behind some other things that we do day to day. So it's actually, if you can take a step away from that defensive mode and actually open yourself up to what is this other person saying, you can start to learn more and start to question yourself and question why do we do it that way? Is this the best way to do it? Is there possibly some way to maybe not change, maybe improve upon, or maybe there is a radical change that would be better? So I actually think that being there and hearing the criticisms and actually hearing them was super helpful for me in developing this perspective that there's not one right way to do things. And there's not one right way that's going to work for every context, for every learner, every country that you're in. So being open and flexible to seeing that there's lots of different ways we could go about this, um, I think was really impactful on my perspective. And I think it really helps me in the position that I am now when it comes to technology. You know, it's we have this software that's used for people around the globe. I've lost track of how many countries. I should have probably had that up, but we're in so many countries. We serve really large organizations and we serve, you know, individual providers with two clients, or parents that just have an account to help their own child. And so how can we make a software that's going to meet the needs of everyone? Because everyone who's serving a learner, recipient of services through our software, in a sense, they deserve to have the best treatment. So how can we design a system that works for everyone? And I don't think you're going to get that if you're just looking through a very narrow lens on what is the science, or not even the science. What is ABA therapy? And it's an ABA therapy form. What is that this one little thing that's meant to fit inside this insurance funded bubble, or is it a broader thing that we can develop that will help everyone?
You hit on something very important there, and I'm so glad you brought it up because you were basically put in an environment where you were basically surrounded by critics.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So you're automatically in this place where people are basically criticizing and casting basically philosophical doubt on behavior analysis. And what I always find funny, I mean, not to get too off topic, but I think you might agree with me, or I would love to hear your take on this. It's not part of this, but the whole anti-ABA movement, like on social media, and we're streaming on TikTok and all this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So I see it all the time. But what I think is so funny about that when people are critics of it, if we are a true radical behaviorist and believe in behaviorism, that's a philosophical underpinning of our science, is literally to be critical, skeptical, and constantly evolving based on data.
Yeah.
That's part of behavior analysis. It's the literal definition of what our science is.
Mm-hmm.
And if we look at the philosophical underpinnings of it, and how the actual industry operates, that there's a huge, massive disconnect. And I think that's why you're seeing this anti-ABA movement. Because if you look at Skinner, when he first came out, he was radical. He wasn't a traditionalist. He called it radical behaviorism for a reason, right? It was meant to look at the root of behavior and including our own behavior and how we are as practitioners, and look at empiricism over, I don't know the word, dogma. We look at empiricism over dogma. We include biological components, all this stuff. And Mike talks about this all the time. I think the reason you see the anti-ABA movement is because there's this trap between modern practice versus the science. And it's this commercialized practice of ABA that's getting the bad rap, where it's seen as it's rigid, it's bound for insurance billing codes, and it's this boilerplate programming and this rigid high-hour model of care, and it's focused on, quote unquote, focused on compliance and checklist mastery criteria, box checking for authorization renewals. And that's not what the science is. The science is about constantly just testing hypotheses and adapting based on what the outcomes are, and you're open to analyzing private events and like cultural contingencies and verbal behavior. So like, I just think it's funny when we get criticized, like they're actually practicing behavior analysis by criticizing our own practice. Like it's literally part of our science. So I just wanted to say that.
Yeah, I think it's important to listen, and I think if we, it's not like an us against them. If we put ourselves into this us against them, like no one's ever going to win in that situation. I think people are passionate because they care, and so can we take our different viewpoints? Can we come together and work together to evolve, as a field, as a service delivery model? I think we
Yeah.
just need to be open to it and to know that we don't have it all figured out, but no one has it. No, it's not like we want medicine to stop. Like, stop your research. You got it. You're good. They're evolving and changing, and so should we.
Exactly. Mike, I'd love to know your take on this, Mike, because like where I was getting at with this, and love for you to talk about it, but if we as clinicians like treat ABA like a religion, because that's kind of what this is. It's like, it's almost
a cult.
It's a cult. Like we're treating it like it's a cult where this manual, like the Cooper book, is like infallible, right? Like you just get like
hold up the definition of a cult. I would loosely agree that you could get within reason, like the people who are diehard ABA, where it's like that's what you need, and like I'm gonna say like the 40-hour defenders.
You're not
right?
practicing ABA at that point. You're
Bingo.
not. That's dogmatic theology.
But that's the thing. That's when you look at it, and as a whole, you see one side of it, that you get people like us, where it's like, listen, I'm welcoming all data, research, and conversation because it's for the betterment of the individual and the system. Versus, I am a subject matter expert and I know everything. You will listen to me blindly because I said so.
Stupid.
Because research based. Right? Like, but that's, and Erin, you talked about it before, right? When you didn't sit there and go, I'm right, you're wrong, you don't know anything about ABA because you don't have a degree, right? You could have. And we see when people dig in their heels, it's not a good time, right? But what you did was you opened the door to conversation and that perspective of, am I doing the things ethically, morally correct and according to the science? Okay, can my science be expanded in these areas? And you're questioning not only your science and the science itself, but also how it can be applied in a variety of different domains. I mean, Sean, we've seen that in a variety of different settings, from like when we supervise RBTs and future BCBAs, where it's like, oh, you mean I don't have to do just a standard assessment and just the VB map? And you're like, no, why would you ever think that? I don't even do a full one. I do a like total assessment where I pull from everything, right? That's just, like you said, Erin, appeasing a funder, right? Because at the end of the day, if we want to do our job, we have to have a metric of measurement, right? Insurance needs to know that we're doing something. And they go, okay, well, what makes it easier for us to read? So we go, these are the things that make it easy for you to read. And people fell very quickly into either the low response effort, high reward, or blissful ignorance of it, where they just didn't know any better. And they didn't know that, like, the typical clinic model from 3 to 7 is like a fractional portion of what you actually see in the world. And it's far beyond a VB map. It's far beyond enables. It's far beyond a standard assessment and a milestones curriculum. It's life. And you have to expand past that.
I don't know. Erin, Mike, this is my final point, and then we'll get back on. I love that Erin brought this up and was like, yeah, I had to kind of defend our science. And like, I don't know. I see it just all over social media, the anti-ABA movement. And like, I see BCBAs then kind of jumping on it and like defending, right? But I think the way you approached it, Erin, like you did it like exactly how you should do it. Like open-minded, welcome the criticism. You treated it being like a true behavior analyst. Like you viewed the criticism as like, here's this environmental stimulus. It's telling us, okay, something with this contingency is failing to produce some sort of socially valid outcome. If people are being critical of it, right? So like, I then equate when I see, the neurodivergent community on TikTok, or like self-advocates or some reform-minded clinicians are basically screaming at the top of their lungs like, hey, something is fucking broken. Like something's broken with what we're doing. If we're a true behavior analyst, like we're not gonna cover our ears and shut our eyes and pretend like it's not happening. Like you're gonna ask, okay, what are the variables maintaining the flawed practices, and how do we now alter those contingencies to fix them? We don't say let's get rid of ABA because that's like getting rid of gravity.
Well, I think too, Sean, to like really sum it up and like help people understand, I don't think people are attacking the science of ABA. They're attacking the therapy.
Yeah.
Right. And there's a huge distinction to be made there that, like, I mean, we've talked about it on, I don't know how many different episodes.
Every one of them.
ABA is neutral. Right. The science itself is neutral. It can be used, like Spider-Man, for good or bad things. Great power, great responsibility. You have to choose how to engage, which means, like we talked about with people's experiences, I'm not sitting here and I'm not going to invalidate someone's experience because that was true. Right. You got a really poor quality of service. I'm terribly sorry for that. Let me show you what it can be and how we can use this wonderful science to build skills, not robots. But I don't blame people when they go, ABA sucks, it should be banned, because their version of it should be. Because A, we would argue that it's not ABA in nature, right? Because it's not adhering to our 7 dimensions. But also, I don't blame you for that because that was your experience. But I think there is a huge separation and like difference between ABA being used as a therapy model and the science of ABA. There shouldn't be, but there is.
Erin, thoughts, close it out, and then we'll get on back to the questions.
Yeah, I think it's just a really, complex, it's difficult to navigate, and you get to these controversial topics and it can be hard to think, am I going to say the right thing? Am I going to offend someone? So it makes it to be a really difficult space, I think, for everyone to navigate in social media. Creates these really complex, environments for these conversations to happen. But I do think that, my experiences with dealing with that more in real life, I don't post a whole lot on social media, but my real life experiences at the university, of course, were very challenging at times. But I did build some really great bridges and really strong relationships with people who, didn't know much about ABA or only knew bad things about it. So I do think that there is a way forward and we can do it. We just need to be really mindful of the way that we're representing ourselves and representing our field. And to know that like you might be the one person that has the shot at changing their mind. You know what I mean? So it's like you're representing the field at all times. So really try to approach those conversations with kindness, with openness, with a perspective of like, how can we start rowing in the same, direction to get towards improved services, a quality of life, access to the community, acceptance, awareness, all of those things I think that everyone, values.
So
I think
Erin,
you
at
forgot
this
one
point,
thing there.
what? Mike,
So I
what were
think
you
you
saying?
forgot one thing because this is where the next question's going. You're talking software
Mm.
because a lot of places it just feels like it's just a data analysis, right? This is built by some major tech company that you just get data analysis, which is cool, but it doesn't factor in what we do on a day-to-day basis, right? So they've never sat in on, a session with an individual who might be in some level of challenging behavior or crisis, or tried to balance, we kind of turn ourselves into octopus where it's like holding a clipboard and a clicker and I'm trying to do a preference assessment and I got my little satchel of toys and all that stuff. How does having your PhD in this make that more efficient, but also how does HiRasmus compare to making this that much easier and effective for us?
Yeah, well, I think it all kind of goes back to the start of Hi-Rasmus and its founding, the mission of why it's there. Nikolai, uh, the CEO and founder, was living in Denmark, had his son Rasmus, who has autism, and they struggled. They struggled really hard in Denmark to find adequate services, support, quality care, caregiver support. It was really very limited. And that's what propelled him to create Hi-Rasmus to use his experience and knowledge in software, in development. He's an engineer, a businessman. He has that skill set and that lived experience of a parent struggling to find the best possible care for their child, to use technology to have a global reach. The mission is to impact the lives of a million individuals with autism. And so I think that having that mission, and that mission is like, we talk about it all the time. It is like our core, everything revolves around it. And I think that that's how you keep the software focused in on what it's meant to do. It's a mission driven product. So I actually developed, I think it was a 6-part training series for specifically, I first delivered it to our engineering team, all about what autism is, what it's like, how you get a diagnosis. We went in depth when we talked about the ABA industry and the challenges that businesses face, a day in the life of a BCBA. And we have a ton of BCBAs on staff. And so a lot of them shared their stories, their experiences. We brought it into the training to really bring that connection to our technical team so that they know, like this software makes an impact. Like it, this might, that little bug that you just fixed now is going to make this technician's, job. This feature that you just built is now going to save a BCBA, 3 hours. And that's 3 more hours that they can spend, focusing on the child in front of them. So we really bring that mission like front and center, to our staff. And that's what keeps us motivated and moving, and keeps us really practical with the decisions that you make. Because anytime you develop software, you have to be, really ruthless with what you plan to build, because you can't just, resources, time, it takes a lot to build even something kind of small. So you have to really focus in on what's going to make the most impact, and so it's thinking about that child. What is going to make the most impact for this child, and make sure that it impacts them in a very positive way, because that software is very powerful. It's in the face of a technician 40 hours a week, so are we creating software that's going to encourage compassion and care?
Yeah.
I mean, oh, go ahead, Sean. Go ahead.
No, I was gonna say, correct me if I'm wrong. When you first jumped on board with Hi-Rasmus, you were beta testing the balance program. So like Kelsey Ruppel's balance, Hanley's balance program. And then you then spun that, and here we go full circle. Because correct me if I'm wrong, we're no longer in London. All right. So now we're living in the States. So now we're back to the States. So it's like, where in the world is Dr. Erin Moran instead of where in the world is Carmen Sandiego? Showing my age. Where in the world is Dr. Erin Moran? Okay, we're in North Carolina.
Yes, it was back in North Carolina.
Okay.
And Dr. Ruppel had just released the balance program, but like there was no information about it, not really. She came to North Carolina, the NCABA conference, to present a workshop. And so I made sure that I was coordinating her workshop. I was helping on the board at the time. And so I basically, was like, please tell me everything you can about balance, because of my focus on caregivers. I really wanted this new intervention to be able to go and support them. So I made that connection with Dr. Ruppel at NCABA. A really lovely time meeting with her. And then a few months later, got an email saying that, these people at HiRasmus are turning balance into a package deal on their software. So I started beta testing, and that's when I first connected with Nikolai, and his mission so strongly aligned with where I was coming from with my international research. So it really brought like those passions kind of together. So as balance was wrapping, like what could we take on as the next project? I'm like, well, I've got these training manuals sitting here, and then I haven't published them because of concerns that I had that if I published those, because they were scripted, right? Like I could have sold them. But I was really concerned about what people might do with them in places where they might, So it was actually Andy Bondi, Dr. Andy Bondi, the co-founder, creator of PECS. I was like a PECS consultant. He was, they had gone through all these different things with PECS throughout the years, and he was like, Erin, someone could take this, fill up a big hotel room, give everyone their certificate. Yay, you learned ABA, and then they could go off. And because it was all in Russian, it was different, and then they could go off, but then they're not going to do good quality work because they don't have ongoing training and supervision. So then I never did anything with them. But, then this opportunity came, and it was like, well, if we put it into a 40-hour course, an RBT course and an IBT course later as well, that training then is part of a package that comes with ongoing supervision from a BCBA. So I felt more comfortable. And then it was incredible to take what I had done with paper, right? Old fashioned, and then see how can technology supercharge it, right? So we put it all into, so the technician would log in, they'd watch the video, the instruction, the presentation, then they see a video model, and then they actually have the opportunity to record a video of themselves performing it if they want to, and upload it to the platform, and their supervisor can watch it. And there's a built-in fidelity checklist. And so they can score their trainee and then give them that feedback. They could see, which steps did I get right? Which steps did I miss? And actually, if you do the playback on the video, the supervisor can leave time-stamped feedback on it. So they could even say like, hey, right here, you missed an opportunity to deliver reinforcement, and they can watch themselves. If you can, cope with how uncomfortable it is to watch a video of yourself, but then you can see, in real time, that's where I missed, or see where they did something right. And that was how we set up. And that was actually Nikolai's idea to do that. So again, another environment where you bring in someone with a different perspective, a different skill set, they bring new ideas that just make it better, and make it more exciting. And turn my, research into something way more than I ever imagined that it would. So that's been very exciting.
Yeah.
I just, I've had this great relationship with HiRasmus, and then it just made sense to come on full time and just continue our clinical work.
It makes sense because we, as an organization, so like with Hickory Learning Group, before we built out the Task List 3 training, and like the reason we built our own in-house 40-hour training was because the role of the RBT within our organization is a little bit more nuanced, because we're actually like training them on how to actually include parents within the session. So like we added some stuff within it, but we had a ton of people go through the training through HiRasmus, and it was so intuitive, and I could see why, because we got to be honest, like majority of the RBT trainings, like if you actually look at the data from like, I think it was like 2025, they posted like a bunch of organizations. I'm not going to name them. Go look at the data yourself. But like you look at the like RBT pass rate on the exam, and it's like atrocious, like taking like thousands, hundreds, tens of thousands of like trainees going through the program, and then they're not
Some
passing.
of those scores are only like 18% for thousands of people testing.
Right. I'll shoot out Apple Tree connection with Tara Zeller. Like she's got a phenomenal RBT training program down in Florida. She's been on our podcast before. Your training on HiRasmus is friggin' great. Like, I'll toot our own horn. We got 100% pass rate on the RBT exam right now. Awesome. Everybody that's taking your training on that platform passed the RBT exam on the first try. Like, I think your decision, because most of the trainings, I'll be honest, most of those trainings are an absolute dumpster fire with uninspiring videos, box checking, no check on quality. And I think you found the right vehicle with HiRasmus to be able to scale it to frontline staff. It's awesome.
It's like, we know didactic training doesn't teach performance skills. Yeah. Yeah. We have a system that, how else would you set up a 40-hour training that could be delivered at scale, but didactic training, you know what I mean? Like that's, if you're going to try to sell it as a commercial product, when you do it in-house, of course, you've got a lot more options to include the hands-on. But if it's something you're trying to sell, it makes the most sense to just have a didactic course. But we really I was not interested in creating just a 40-hour didactic lesson. It was really important to us that we have it BST based as much as we could.
And I think that's one of the things that we just so thoroughly love and appreciate of the platform. Because between the three of us, we've probably used, probably like 10 different data collection softwares in our histories. And I can tell you, like, for certain, in using HiRasmus, it's never a question of if I can do it. It's who has to show me how to do it from the team. Because A, you guys are exponentially reachable. I can send an email and be on a call within like a day, right? And secondly, it's not just focused on like what I'm doing with my prospective client, I can use this with staff. I can use this with parents. I use this with supervision students. Like, you guys took a much needed overtake of the system and said, you guys can do this with everybody. And for those who are tuning in, how is HiRasmus building tools kind of right now that allow BCBAs to spend way less time dealing with, graphs trying to upload and look pretty and check the right box, and giving them more time, like you mentioned, to focus on actual behavior management and intervention and true parent success and independence?
Yeah, I think it starts with really a fundamental knowledge of what are the pain points that people are experiencing? What are the real pain points? What are the real time suckers? And it's not always, the most obvious ones, right? So it's really trying to get down to the core of like, what's the real problem that people face? What's the real blocker? And trying to use the technology to really cleverly get at those pain points. Do you know what I mean? And alleviate that pain, especially for the menial administrative type stuff. We shouldn't have BCBAs having to spend a whole lot of time on settings and copy pasting and formatting and stuff like that. So trying to remove those, piece by piece and making everything seamless, I think is part of it. Sean and I presented a panel at Calaba with some other really wonderful individuals, and Angie Broff said she's CEO out in
Aloha.
yeah,
Hawaii.
and she's amazing. And she said to me, and it's like stuck with me ever since, she's like, there's value in the hard work. There's value in doing the hard work. And I think about that all the time. So the technology, I'm not trying to replace the hard work that's worth doing. The clinical decisions that should be made by the clinician. But what I'm trying to do is give them the most space and time to focus on the hard work and giving them the best possible sources of information. Now we've got, AI agents and, all these different, incredible things that we can do. So how can we surface some of this information quicker to require a little less digging, but not making the decisions for them, but giving them access to the information in a quicker way, and then allowing them to update everything in real time. The treatment reports I think are a real hot topic in ABA technology, and everyone wants AI and how can we use AI to reduce treatment planning time, of course, because it's a large time suck. But I think we need to really think about things in a new way. I think traditionally, you would have a big Word document, that was your behavior plan that you'd have to maintain. And then you have a data sheet. That's another document that you have to maintain. And then maybe you have some kind of parent log. You'd have all these separate, disconnected places where you're doing things. And so then they don't talk to each other, and they become stagnant. And who has access to what? And that can create a lot of confusion. And do people have access to the most recent plan? Or does anyone read the treatment plan after it gets approved by the funding source? And so it's really trying to think about, that was the old way of doing things. How can we use technology now to bring connection, to make sure that everyone has up-to-date knowledge, up-to-date information, everyone's on the same page, and reduce the burden of having to maintain all these different areas, different documents and stuff like that.
And I genuinely think you guys have done just that.
Mhm.
One of the coolest things that I've ever seen, arguably any organization that's customer service driven, is you guys are so tuned into the community of people that you work, I would say for instead of with,
Mhm.
that the amount of suggestions that you guys take that we see implemented in live time, that's like, hey, I would really love if we could figure out how we can do this, insert this new feature. And you're like, oh, here's a link, send it to the queue. It gets voted on. And the community actually gets to empower ourselves of hey, what do you guys think the platform needs? Instead of just being like, hey, we released this new feature. And everyone's like, okay, and yay, I don't know what you want me to do with that information, which I think is super, super cool. I also want to shout out your guys' actual app for actually working, and being very much user friendly.
Mhm.
right? In a matter of 2 minutes, you can understand how to use the platform in its entirety from the app, from like a staff perspective. It gives you the exact amount of information that you need to be successful and nothing you don't, which
Mhm.
I think is really, really important. The other piece that is really freaking cool is just how transparent it is from an everybody perspective, from the day you're like beginning intake to every single session and everything in between. Like we go through that same opportunity with families of
Mhm.
look at the app. This is what you can do to say, how was Timmy's day? Right? Because caregiver 1 versus caregiver 2, you want to pop in and check? You can check at any point in time. And I think that's something that really sets you guys apart from, I would say, everyone,
Mhm.
because there is no hidden agenda. There is no, backdoor secrets. It is transparent, mission driven with exceptional value to the community.
Mhm. Yeah, we have, if you're not a HiRasmus user, we have an avenue for users to provide ideas, suggestions, feedback, and it's definitely not a black hole. I read every
They listen.
single thing that gets posted in there, and I love it. And we will respond to people and sometimes hop on a call like, "Hey, wait, can you tell me more?" And they're like, "Wow, someone's here. Someone's wants to talk with me about it," but we love it and we talk about it. We take the user feedback, you know, super well. It's you go back to it. It's like the rat is always right, So if they're asking for something, they have an idea for something, there's a reason for it. So then it's our job, you know, to take all these incredible ideas, suggestions, and then try to make a path forward, right? And have a vision for product development and your product strategy. But how can we make sure that we're hearing these voices, not the voice of the customer, is that we're in sync, and that we're going down and constantly reevaluating. We
Yeah.
never want to be in a situation where like this is what we're gonna do and it's like blinders on. It's that openness to pivot to, as you learn more information, get more feedback, maybe you change, and we quite often do, for one reason or another. So I think it's just that openness to hearing how it goes. What do you like? What do you don't? So we release things and then we meet with people like Mike and Sean and say, what do you think? Did it land well? Did it meet
Wow.
your need? Did we miss it the mark a little bit? And if so, what can we do to change it? And then we'll change it. So I think that it's that ongoing experimentation and feedback loops that we really value.
It sounds like you're using ABA to design the software.
It's
Beat me.
almost as if.
You beat me to it, Mike. I was gonna say, all right, so we basically come full circle. So like what I've learned from this, and I think this kind of ties into the last question before we let you kind of go on your spiel about where we can find you and stuff. The final question I got for you, I think, ties into basically your whole journey with ABA. Like you've just been like taking on barriers and being like, cool, give me the sledgehammer, I'm about to knock it down. Or like give me the stick of dynamite, I'm about to blow this wall up and just get through it. So like you're all about just like creative problem solving, looking at innovation. I think you found basically the right owner of a company that's all about that, right? And I think, would you agree that's like probably the best part of your job right now is just problem solving and like being able to innovate?
Yeah, it's like
Yes or
this,
no?
like, there's no like wrong idea. I mean, of course not, but it's this open space where it's like, give us your craziest idea. What do you have?
So
Like, let's innovate, let's go with it. And then,
that's what I want to that's what I want to touch on right now. Cause like there's so many workflow headaches like for BCBAs that make you want to like pull your hair out. Right. So if you can, is there any like specific clinical headache or like administrative nightmare that like you're super hyper focused on? If you can even tell us, like you might not even be able to tell us, but even if you can't tell us right now, was there something that was in the past? If you can't tell us something that's coming in the future, was there something in the past where you're like, God, I got to solve this problem. And then you solved it, right? And you knocked it out with Hi-Rasmus. Or is there something you're currently working on where you're like, we're going to have a solution. Stay tuned. I think it's actually going to change the game for clinicians.
It's a really good question. It's a hard one to answer, of course, as I will say one thing that I'm really interested in, if you're hyper focused on right now, if you will, is really the interconnectivity of the data, and not thinking about things in isolation, really trying to think about how can we collect data in a way that's very simple and not requiring a lot of effort from technicians, but is really pulling out the most information that we can. So I'm really thinking about, I think that some things, when you take something that's paper and pen and you turn it into software, you have the paper and pen as your framework for how to do it, right? Um, and I think that was necessary to get buy-in to online data collection. A lot of people are still using paper and pen, and it's a hard change. So you need it to be familiar and something that people can pick up, like you said, Mike, and do right away. But really trying to, I'm excited to see where we can go and how we can take things and kind of maybe reimagining some aspects of what does it mean to collect data, and what does it mean to run a session. And I'm just very excited about all the things that are to come.
Yeah, Erin, I was gonna say, like, one of my favorite things to do is within the platform is just playing around with like the insights graph and like
Mhm.
insights graphs and like creating all those custom features, and like there's a lot of cool shit you can do. Like I was playing around the other day, like with one of our early learners, I was like, you know what? Everyone talks about a echoic demand transfer, right?
Mhm.
You know what you can do on HiRasmus? I don't know, pull up the echoic targets and you can literally put on demanding targets and you can see if there's a correlation with the data path to say like, oh, look, they're learning echoics and cool. Here's the actual date where the transfer happened or it was starting to happen. And you can literally see the correlation in the data, which is fan-friggin-tastic, like the
Yeah.
ability to do that. Instead of having to like, flip through a book or, okay, I'm going to look at this echoic graph and now I'm going to go switch to my next program and look at this and try to blend it. You literally at the touch of a button, just hit a filter thing and it puts both data points on a graph and you can see it.
Yeah, our graphing capabilities, like the
Nuts.
different all of the combinations you can do, it's incredible. And that's why I love meeting with customers and seeing how they've, constantly learning new new ways
Re-
to put some of the different
Replace
filters together.
found behaviors of concern with replacement behaviors. Like you can literally see like, okay, is this I did it the other day. I was like, okay, is this person learning their replacement behavior to request like to remove themselves from a social situation in comparison to like spitting at people?
Mhm.
And it was like, oh, look at that. Spitting behavior is going down while this behavior is going up. Like I now have a functional replacement behavior. And like you can then report on that to an insurance company. You can say, look, the replacement behavior is increasing, challenging behavior is decreasing. We found a functional replacement behavior. It's absolutely incredible and wild. And the crazy part is, Erin, no one's paying me to say that. Hi-Rasmus isn't paying me to say this right now. I think I got to talk to Nikolai. Mike, I think we got to talk to Nikolai and we got to get some product placement on here. I'm sitting here with
Oh,
a cup.
hush.
I'm like, Hi-Rasmus, yeah, here we go. I mean, we just love the product so much. Like we're willing to just talk about it and promote it because it's a game changer.
I know.
I mean,
Well,
if it's
you're
going to make it easier for people to do their jobs, that means better quality outcomes and more effective treatment.
Mhm.
So you don't need all the extra fluff.
Mm-mm.
You get what you need and deserve so you can go back to doing the job that really, really matters.
Yeah.
Well,
And we do it for you guys. We do it for you and the clients that you serve. It's like, how can I make the job easier? And we haven't talked about technicians, but I've got technicians on my mind all the time. They've got a
that,
tough job. So it's like, how can we alleviate some of that stress that they're feeling? So it's really trying to look out for the clinicians in our field, looking at even like the causes of burnout. What can we learn from that? And how can that influence the technology that we're developing? Because we need clinicians and technicians, we need people that are feeling good and fresh when
yeah.
they come in. Can we be a part of making that happen?
Absolutely. Erin, we got to close this out. I mean, where can people find you? Who the hell is this? Sum it up. Who the hell is this person that's on this podcast? Where can
Yeah.
we find you?
Come find me on LinkedIn. I'm there. You can just shoot me an email, Erin@HiRasmus.com. I'm happy to chat anytime. Anyone, user, not user. I love to chat about ABA, about the software, international development, any of the topics that we hit on today. I am here and I'm happy to connect.
This episode, Mike, I'm looking at the time and like we're over an hour, like close to an hour and 15 minutes, and this felt like 30 minutes because it's just a pleasure to talk
That's
to
what
you.
happens when you're talking ABA. We get into it. All right. Well, that is all the time we have for today's episode of Rad N Bad. A massive thank you to Dr. Erin Moran for stopping by and giving us a look behind the curtain on what Hi-Rasmus is building. It is incredibly refreshing to see with real global boots on the ground clinical experience driving the technology that our field relies on every single day. If you want to check out the tools that Erin and her team are building and developing with Hi-Rasmus to elevate clinical quality and make the life of a BCBA way easier, please feel free to check out Hi-Rasmus. That said, keep the data clean, keep your standards high, and we'll catch you on the next episode. Stay rad and bad.
Peace.